Hey, just a heads up that the following content may be disturbing or triggering for some listeners and is not appropriate for children. Please take care of yourself and others who may be listening with you. Welcome to the Bonus Babies Podcast, a show that has no easy answers, only hard questions.
Having those doors closed behind me and just like really looking off into the horizon, knowing I was carrying the seed and just vowing from that moment to prove all of them wrong. Like I became obsessed with proving everyone wrong and showing all of them that I am not worthless. I am capable of achieving whatever I want to achieve. I have no idea how I'm going to do it or how I'm going to get there, but I'm going to figure it out because this child that is growing in my body deserves to live a normal life. And I'm going to do everything in my power to make sure he doesn't feel poverty at all. And mind you, I was very poor when he was a baby. He didn't feel it. He had no idea. Never experienced it. If anyone went hungry, it was me.
Can you tell me what you call the kids who you've cared for over the years?
We feel that the children that we receive coming into our home are bonuses. So we call them bonus babies.
I love that. This is your host, Jayne Amelia Larson, and I'm a CASA, a court-appointed special advocate volunteer for youth in foster care. Yeah, I know it's a mouthful. In the same way a CASA works, I explore all things in the foster care maze by talking to kids, parents, caregivers, attorneys, social workers, therapists, really anybody and everybody who will speak to me to keep the conversation open and the information flowing about all things CASA.
Hi, this is Jake Eberly, the producer of the Bonus Babies podcast, and today, Jayne Amelia speaks with Charity Chandler-Cole. Charity is the CEO of CASA Los Angeles, and her current mission is to change the policies that criminalize children just for being disadvantaged. She can relate, having come from poverty and being incarcerated multiple times because she was poor, and no one ever asked if she needed help or what the circumstances were that led her there. It was simply assumed that she was a criminal. Now she's on a mission to change that system for others so they don't have to suffer through what she did. Here's Charity Chandler-Cole.
Hey, I'm here with Charity Chandler-Cole. Hi.
Good afternoon. I'm so glad to be here.
Well, you've heard you have the best name ever, right?
That I have the best name ever. You know, I do have a pretty good name to be working in this
You
space.
have a pretty good name.
I do.
Has anybody ever called you C cubed or C to the third power or stuff like that?
No.
No,
Never.
I'm surprised because you are kind of.
Well, I have triple C.
Triple C?
I have gotten triple C.
Yeah, that's pretty good too. Okay, can you tell me a little bit about who you are, how you're raised, family of origin, all that stuff?
Yes, I was born and raised here in Los Angeles, California.
Yeah. I think I already told you, you're the only person I know now that's from LA practically. Not really,
you
but
know,
almost,
there's
right?
not a lot of us, but
No.
born and raised here all over LA County, from Los Angeles to West LA, South LA, Hawthorne, Carson, Compton. I pretty much lived all over LA County.
And how were you raised? What was the situation?
Well, I was born into a normal home, two parents, two working parents from LA. My father was a preacher and worked for, I want to say, Boeing at the time, and my mother worked at a grocery store. They were both very much in the church. My mother sang in the choir and was a praise dancer. I had a somewhat normal home. We were extremely poor. I didn't realize we were poor at the time because that was normal. That's all I knew. And so I didn't realize until later how hard life was for my parents and my parents to raise us. My mom and dad had 6 kids back to back, and 6 kids within an 8.5-year period. So we're all very close in age.
A lot. Yeah,
I was raised in a seemingly normal family until my parents divorced at 10 when I was 10 years old, and that's when everything kind of went a little crazy.
I bet that was hard, right?
It was hard because you have a normal, seemingly normal family, you know, 2 parents, a roof over your head, you know, food on the table. It may not have been 3 meals a day, but you had a strong family dynamic. And then we really realized how poor we were when my mother became a single mom and had to raise all 6 of us on her own while battling breast cancer, going through a divorce, and starting to struggle with mental health issues that were undiagnosed. So it got real, and, you know, we were forced to really take care of ourselves and each other. And it was hard.
Right. And then what happened to you when you were 16? Because I know that was a life-changing moment too.
Absolutely. So growing up and how I grew up and in the communities I grew up in and experiencing extreme poverty, one of the things we would do to survive was steal, whether it's stealing food or clothing. And I happened to be at a Ross Dress for Less one day, stealing underwear for my little sister. Yes, I took a Rockaware orange Rockaware t-shirt for myself too. But I was stealing underwear for my baby sister because she really, really needed some. And I promised her I would get her some before I went on my little date with my boyfriend at the time. And I got caught stealing underwear at the Ross Dress for Less. And because my mother refused to pick me up because she had to choose between leaving her job to come get me or literally putting food on the table because she could have got fired. Because in our communities, you get fired for leaving without permission or having to rush to take care of family matters. And as a result, I was handcuffed and booked and sent to Central Juvenile Hall and spent the next 2 years of my life bouncing between juvenile hall and foster care.
Wow. So how did it end up that once you were taken in custody, why did you end up staying there? How come someone didn't say, wait, she doesn't belong here? That didn't happen.
Yeah. So no one asked me any questions from the police officers that came to get me from Ross to the people that were booking me to the people in the juvenile halls. No person ever said, why are you here? Or why were you stealing? Or better yet, you don't have to steal. Here are some resources or support we can give you and your family. No one questioned anything. It was just so normal for someone like me to be booked and sent to juvenile hall and essentially punished for being poor and not given any type of support. It was normalized. And I was so blown away with how okay everyone was with locking me up and putting me in jail in a place that was terrifying and scary and where adults took out their aggressions on young children that lacked power and how we were treated, essentially like filth, like we didn't belong in this world. It was such a scary, terrifying experience, but not once during that whole time did anyone ask me, what do I need? Why did I do it? Could you use some support? And most importantly, are you okay? Like no one asked during the whole time. So
Yeah, and you're a young woman, so this isn't that long ago. I mean, it's not like this was like 50 years ago or something. This is practically around the corner.
well, thank you for I am somewhat young, but it was maybe what, 20 years ago when this happened? I'm 36.
Yeah, well, it's not that long ago. Yeah.
My son's 18 now, and so it happened when I was 6. I had him when I was 18. So it happened about 20 years ago.
Now, okay, so paint the picture for me of what that juvenile detention center was like. Like, how did
So
you sleep? How did you move? What were the doors locked? Like, well, I mean, obviously, but
so everything was locked, and it was just like a scary institution. It was something like out of a TV show where you see, really scary bad adults being locked up with the key thrown away and being treated as if they've committed some treacherous type of crime. And we were literally handcuffed all the time, forced to walk with our hands behind our back,
what?
put in cages.
What?
Yes. Oh, we could not, even when we had to walk with we had to form this diamond on our back and we had to walk like that. And if we didn't, we would get in a lot of trouble. And we were told every day, every minute of the day, what we could do, how we could do it, when we could eat, when we could go to the restroom, when to shower. We had zero control over our lives. We couldn't look at the COs any type of way. The officers couldn't talk back, couldn't have an opinion, couldn't have a voice. We couldn't disagree with anything, or we would get in trouble. We would be forced to stay in our cells for all day, essentially, unless it was time to eat. They had to feed us, but even then, the food was terrible. It was moldy sometimes. And there was just so much abuse happening in the juvenile halls, from emotional to physical to sexual abuse. I always think of it as just adults who hated their lives, and you can tell that they were miserable. They either hated what was happening at home or they hated their jobs. And this is where they came to really take all that aggression and anger out, like on helpless kids. And no one would question that either, because there was this whole idea that we were there because we were bad, because we did something wrong, because we deserved to be there. And that's how they treated us. There was no rehabilitation. It was just punishment and criminalization.
Right. And what was happening to you as far as your schooling? Because you were a really good student when you were taken in, right?
Yes, I loved school. Like reading was I didn't love school. I actually hated school because kids would always tease me because I was so poor. But I loved learning. I loved reading. You know, my dad gave me a really good foundation and he would have me reading chapter books at the age of 5 years old. And because my circumstances weren't as favorable as I would have wanted them to be growing up, I found solace in reading books and I would escape to, faraway lands or fairy tales. And it just was just a beautiful experience for me. And I was an overachiever. So I was always the kid who would raise their hand in class and have the answer and like, pick me, pick me, pick me. And so I was a straight A student. I was on track. Granted, during high school, I fell off a bit because my parents were divorcing. We were going through all of those circumstances, and I just did not want to go to school. But I was still very smart, still scored where I needed to score. So when I went to juvenile hall, they kind of make you take these little assessments, but they really didn't mean anything because they put all of us in the same classroom. We learned the same things. And I was 16 years old taking classes that were at a third grade level, like literally given worksheets
Wow.
that third graders would have
Wow.
because they automatically just assumed that we weren't smart, we didn't have anything going for ourselves, that we were behind or delayed. And even if they did assume that, you would think they would have more support and resources in the juvenile hall so that when we leave there, we're ready to be successful agents of society like they want us to be. But that wasn't the case. We were just thrown in a room and they checked a box to say they gave us education and got and received God knows how much funding as a result of it. But I actually fell so far behind because of the education I received while I was in juvenile hall and while I was in the foster home that I actually had to do, and they lost all of my records on top of that. So when I finally got out, I had to redo 12th grade because there was no record of me ever being in school.
Wow, so this is unconscionable. I mean, it's just really, really bad care of kids who just needed a support system, right? That sounds
Yes,
like, yeah.
yes. And
So,
to your point, the kids that were locked up, they all needed support. These were
yeah,
kids who most of the girls I interacted in there were locked up for being raped by grown men under the guise of prostitution.
that's
That's
right.
what they caught them. They were literally young girls who were in there for having sex with grown men, and the grown men were out, or young girls that have experienced tons of abuse, sexual abuse, emotional abuse from not just their parents, but relatives, other people outside, teachers, doctors, Lord knows who. These were torn, broken, hurt girls that were punished and criminalized for what happened to them.
So then you ended up in foster care in a foster home. So they only kept you in the detention center for a period of time, or did they hold it over you like a threat?
So they kept me in the first time for a number of months. I got released on probation. And the terms of my probation were to basically do whatever my mother said. And so during that time, at this point, I hated my mom. She
Yeah,
allowed them to take me to jail. That relationship was torn and strained. But instead of stealing or selling drugs, or doing any of the things that I shouldn't be doing, I got a job at Hometown Buffet. And so I remember going to court to get off probation, the same judge every time. And I proudly told her, look at, I'm doing a great job. Actually, I didn't get to tell her. She didn't ask me any questions, but I stood there with my uniform on so she could see that I had a job and I actually had to go to work right after court. And because I had a job, she said every time I left to go to work, I ran away. And that was a violation of my probation. So they made me take off my belt in the courtroom to my Hometown Buffet outfit and then go outside and take off my Hometown Buffet uniform. And then they processed me, put handcuffs on me, and I had to go back to juvenile hall because I violated my terms of my probation, got a job, was disrespectful to my mom whenever they said because I talked back to her and didn't respect her and it was their fault and her fault why I did it, that I was punished for that. Instead of saying, hey, we realize that because of this experience, your relationship is strained. You guys could benefit from some counseling, some resources and support. Still, no one addressed the poverty. I wouldn't have to work if we could afford to give me lunch money or to, give me the clothes I need so I'm not going to school and being bullied and harassed by people because of how I look. No one once addressed that. But because I decided to address it myself by getting a job at 16 years old at Hometown Buffet, I was punished and criminalized for trying to be self-sufficient. And then from there, I went to foster care because when I was released the last time, there was no one there to pick me up. And so they had to put me into foster care. And by foster care, I mean a level 12 or 13 group home.
Okay, I wanna hear about that, but also I just wanna ask you now, have you had a chance to meet any of those people that were involved in your life at that time?
I haven't. Like, I don't remember any of their names. I don't even know if the judge is still alive. I think about that all the time. I suppressed so much of that experience. I don't remember anyone's names. I don't, I could vaguely remember what the judge looks like, but I have no idea who any of these people are. And if I did, I don't think I would want to meet them. I don't think I would want to even show them, look at who I am now or what I've become, because I'm afraid they'll take credit for it. I'm afraid they'll say, see, because you were here, that's what allowed you to be the woman you are today.
Yeah, you're right, that might happen.
If it wasn't for this terrible experience, they would find some way to take credit for it. But honestly, I don't know if I would want to see them. At one point I did want to see the judge, but I don't think I would want to.
Okay, so can you describe what a level 12 group home is like?
So I didn't even know what a level 12 group home was at the time. When I was taken out of juvenile hall, I was put into a group home that very much reminded me of juvenile hall called Booth Memorial Center, and they were closed down because some of the crazy things that were happening in there.
That's right, it's
But
closed down.
it was, yeah. And so it was pretty much a group home where the only difference was that our doors weren't locked and we got to kind of walk around from time to time, but it was still very structured, still told what to do and when to do it. But I found out when doing some research recently that they were getting paid about $5,400 a month to house me. And that was like 3 times what my mom was getting paid a month, and that could have really addressed some of the poverty we were experiencing. But also, I didn't qualify to be in that type of group home. That group home was for girls in the foster care system that were pregnant or parenting, and also young people that had really bad, severe behavioral issues and needed to have like kind of that clinical lens. I didn't fit any of those descriptions, but the practice back then, and which we're trying to move away from now, is they would automatically put us in a group home because that's where you got the bigger checks, and it was just easier to say put her there versus finding you a home that's appropriate and where you can thrive. And so a lot of us were in that place who didn't need to be there. And I had caseworkers. They wrote a letter to my judge once saying that Charity should not be in this group home. There was one caseworker who would try to find like extracurricular activities for me just to get me out, because think about it emotionally. If you're in a place filled with people who some may need help and support and others don't, but we're being treated as if we do and forced to go to these groups and therapy, and they're trying to insist that you tell them something about yourself so that they can diagnose you and give you treatment. It was exhausting. And so, while in there, I just experienced being told constantly that we weren't good enough, that we weren't worth anything, that we didn't have any value, that we were bad, that our parents didn't want us. There were, staff and young people bringing in drugs all the time. So all we did was really smoke weed every day, up until the point where I started being trafficked. A lot of us were being trafficked in that group home, sex trafficked while in that group home. And, that experience alone just made you feel like, why am I even alive? Like you already are powerless. You have no control over yourself. And now, they get to hang this over your head, and they do it in a way where they attach first they trick you into it, but then they attach some type of value to it that you need, whether it's your meal, for the day, or promises of being able to leave that place and have enough money to support yourself. It was just extremely sad, to the point where I had to run away. I literally ran away from the group home because I could no longer take just being used and being abused. And my punishment from running away from my oppressors was Twin Towers County Jail, because I turned 18 during the time I ran away. And no one ever asked me, why did you run away? What was happening? What was going on? And I honestly wouldn't have trusted them with the answer if I did, because I would have felt they would have used that against me too. But, during that whole experience, we were never, ever asked, what do we want? What do we need? How do you feel? Like, you're okay. Like, we had no autonomy. We had no voice. We had no spirit. Like, we were just zombies walking around, doing as we were told and just existing.
How did you get past any of that, Charity? How did you get beyond it? I mean, I don't think you can ever really get beyond it, but
I got pregnant. Yeah. When I was on the run, I actually got pregnant right when I turned 18 with my son. And first, I was headed to have an abortion because there was no way I was bringing a child into this world to suffer. But because his father and his family wanted the baby and they wanted me, I was like, wait, someone wants me? Someone sees value in me, even if it's just to breed and have this baby. Like he really wanted his baby. And that just made me feel like I wasn't alone in that, okay, maybe I can do this. But then I also refused to bring a child into this world to suffer. And then a Black child at that. I was terrified of bringing him into a world where I knew I had no power. I knew they could take my baby away from me if they wanted to. No excuses, no questions asked. And so when I was pregnant and decided to keep my baby, I actually turned myself in because I knew, because I AWOL'd from my group home, that I had a warrant out for my arrest. And I knew a police officer in the area, and he told me, oh, just turn yourself in. You were a minor. It was petty theft. You'll probably just be processed in the precinct and then be let go because it's so minor. But I was processed and then taken back to the same judge. And mind, the same judge 4 different times sentenced me. She put me in juvie the first time, juvie the second time, put me in Booth Memorial, and then I was put before her for a 4th time. And she locked me up again.
wow.
And I ended up spending weeks in Twin Towers during the one time in history, I believe, where they were the most overcrowded. And so instead of being, locked away with all the people who did nothing really, I was literally being housed with people that committed murders and rapes, and because there was no place to house us. And I never once told anyone I was pregnant because I was terrified of anyone knowing that secret. But ended up going to Twin Towers, did my time, and was released like nothing happened. I was like, the doors opened and they shut behind me. Not, do you need anything? Where are you going to live? I was homeless. Like it was as if once that chapter closed and they got their money and they could no longer restrain me or hold me back anymore. Like I was obsolete to them. I no longer mattered or existed. And what I did after the fact, the real public safety concerns everyone says they had, no one was concerned about that. No one was concerned about, will she go steal because she's homeless and poor and with child, which they didn't know, or, is she going to run away again and do something crazy? No one cared about that because they already got what they wanted from me. And the only time they will care again is once I commit a crime, nothing to prevent it. And so I just remember, having those doors closed behind me and just like really looking off into the horizon, knowing I was carrying the seed and just vowing from that moment to prove all of them wrong. Like I became obsessed with proving everyone wrong and showing all of them that I am not worthless. I am capable of achieving whatever I want to achieve. I have no idea how I'm going to do it or how I'm going to get there, but I'm going to figure it out because this child that is growing in my body deserves to live a normal life. And I'm going to do everything in my power to make sure he doesn't feel poverty at all. And mind you, I was very poor when he was a baby. He didn't feel it. He had no idea, never experienced it. If anyone went hungry, it was me. And we talk about it to this day. He was like, I had no idea, Mom, because I refused to let him have that experience and for him to grow up feeling as if, the world wasn't his for the taking. He just turned 18 and he's a phenomenal young man. And I mean, I did it. This is a monumental year for me because my child turned 18. While I was growing him in my stomach in jail, he's literally 18 now and thriving, and it was worth it.
And you have 3 other kids too.
3 other kids. I have twins that are 9 and a 6-year-old daughter.
Mm-hmm. And you've also been raising your own nephew too, right?
I raised my nephew for 12 years. He just went back to his mom, I want to say about a year and a half ago. And it took me having this fancy title to get him back home because he should have never been taken away.
Of course.
He should have never been taken away.
So how did you end up being in the position that you are now? Because I imagine you had to fight for it. You're now the CEO of CASA of Los Angeles.
Yes.
First book is coming out, right? And we're going to talk about that in a minute. But how did you end up where you are? Because first of all, I can see you're a scrapper, very beautiful scrapper, but you're a scrapper. right?
Thank you. So it's funny. I actually never wanted to have a job like this. I had this thing where I did not want my advocacy tied to my paycheck. This is actually my very first job working in child welfare. I
Hmm.
always sat on very powerful boards and committees and did things to influence policy that was separate from my job that I did day to day that paid the bills. I wanted the two completely separate. So I would work in great positions and lead organizations that were not related to child welfare, but then go sit on commissions and committees and do things at the state level that will help direct and change the trajectory of how we showed up in these spaces. And then one day I got a call from the former CEO saying, "Hey, I'm about to step down. I think you should look at applying for this job."
Is that
And
my
at
girl,
first,
Wendy Julian?
that was Wendy Julian.
Yeah,
We
I'm
both
a big
sat on the
fan of her.
She's an amazing. She's phenomenal, and I'm just so grateful for her leadership at CASA because she put so many things in place, especially around juvenile justice, around racial and social justice, that really allowed me to come in and not work and have to fight as hard as I would have. But when she first told me about the opportunity, I vaguely knew about CASA, but I didn't really know what CASA was. But what I did know, I didn't like. So I was like, oh, that's that org that's rooted in white
It's
saviorism.
those old white ladies all trying to do
All of
good. I
that,
know.
I don't want anything to do with any of that. But when I started to really look at the opportunity, and let me back up. I also didn't want a job where I had to what I would usually do is say, just get your foot in the door and you could go in and change things later. I wanted to come in from the beginning and say, this is who I am. This is what I plan to do. Are you ready? Not just in theory, but in practice. And because I took that approach when interviewing, and the board and everyone was so receptive to it, I was shocked for one. But I also saw the opportunity for CASA because it's an organization unlike any other where we have the platform and positionality in the courts, and we could really help judges and everyone else make strong, trauma informed, and culturally responsive decisions that are going to prevent situations like I experienced and really make sure our young people have a voice and give them opportunity and make sure they're thriving. And so I saw the tremendous opportunity in this role. And so I applied, went through the most rigorous interview process. I think I went through 25,000 interviews, 360-degree reference check, never experienced anything like it. But in the end, I got the job and they got me because it was definitely mutual. But I am surprisingly loving my job. I wasn't sure how much I would love it. And I told myself in the beginning, I'll give it 2 years. And we're at the 2 year mark. I'm still here. But I don't see myself leaving anytime soon because I just really love what I'm doing. And there's so much work left to do that I don't leave anything without having accomplished what I came to accomplish. But I'm starting to feel so comfortable that this feels like home for me.
Right, but you're also getting your doctoral degree at the same
I
time.
am.
Yeah.
I am.
Okay, so wow.
Yeah, so I started my doctorate program in January and then got this job in April. So I had no plans of starting a new job at all. Had I started CASA first, I probably wouldn't have applied for the doctoral program, but it worked out because the work I do in my doctoral program is all around foster care and systems change and advocacy. So it almost doesn't feel like I'm doing any work. Everything I'm doing in my doctoral program, I'm getting to apply here at CASA and vice versa. So it's actually been extremely easy. So easy that I was able to write a book on top of
That
all
was
of
what I was
it.
gonna ask you. So there's a beautiful poster behind you. So
Thank you.
this is your first book, right?
This is my first book. It's,
Stranger Danger.
it's called Stranger Danger.
Yeah. So can you tell me about that? Is it about like your whole life or one
It's
part of it
not.
or what?
It's just a part of my life from 16 to 18 years old. And I've actually been trying to write this book for the past 15 years. I've been on chapter 1 for 15 years
Oh,
because it's
wow.
just been incredibly hard to write that story. And then I had to write it in the third person, which was easier because I started talking about that girl's story, not my story. And that's how I was able to finish it. And it came out completely different than I would have imagined because I thought it would have been a longer time span, but it was 16 to 18 years old. And when you think of strangers, you normally think of like that creepy guy that's in the alley trying to lure you in with candy, or somebody approaching you that you don't know who they are, or someone you've just met, and you kind of put a wall up immediately, and you go through this process where they have to kind of earn your respect and you don't trust them and they're strangers, and our parents teach us about stranger danger growing up. But when it comes to policies that are in place to people that wear badges or uniforms or have positions of power or, work like teachers, doctors, policemen, even CASAs, judges. We automatically get to skip the line and demand people's respect and come into their lives and tell them what to do with their life, with their children, with themselves. But we actually do the most harm. And so in this book, the stranger is the system. The strangers are the people that we don't really know, but that we're forced to respect and trust and give our all to, and that are causing the most harm. And so in my story, I talk about all of these interactions I have with the system and different people within the system that are perpetuating harm, and how time after time, there was just so many missed opportunities to help me. That I ended up experiencing a lot of trauma and abuse. And it's very, this is the most, if anyone knows me or attended fireside chats or heard me talk or just interact with me on the daily, I'm extremely vulnerable and transparent normally. I have never been more vulnerable in my life than I have in this book. I was so vulnerable and give so many details that I almost want to call my publisher and say, don't print anything. I changed my mind. Don't put it out there. But it was important for me to really highlight my experience, but also I go really very much in detail into the sexual exploitation I experienced. And again, just the people that are advocates that have these terms that we think they're advocates, we think they're our champions, we think they're our saviors, and they're actually causing more harm. I really uplift that, because at CASA, we're advocates, but we have to earn being an advocate. Having these titles do not make you an advocate. I am a stranger until I meet you and show you that I am showing up for you, that I'm here to help you, to ensure you have the best possible opportunity, the best possible outcome. I have to prove that I'm an advocate. Many people, social workers, everyone, aren't advocates. They show up and they do a job, and it's a transaction they're having every day of, do this with that kid, check this box, write this report, but we're not really advocating for the child. We're not actually trying to do things that are in their best interest and that are in their family's best interest. We're showing up to do a job. And so for me, the title advocate is, I want to start a movement around #advocate, not stranger. So we get to really sit back and unpack and do some critical self-reflection and say, as a CASA, as someone leading CASA, as a social worker, as a judge, am I truly advocating for this child, or am I just doing my job? Am I agreeing with policies that are causing harm? Am I following processes simply because I'm told to, or I'm resisting when I need to resist? Am I disrupting when I need to disrupt? Am I questioning why things are and exist in the way they are when I feel deep down in my heart that it's wrong? Because if you're not, you don't get to call yourself an advocate. If you're not listening to that young person, if you're not seeing them, if you're not asking how you could help, if you're not finding opportunities and supports and asking, is this something I would let my child experience or go through? Is this something I would want for me? If you're not doing that questioning, and it's okay for them to have that experience, for them to languish in these systems, for that mother to walk down the hill to a bus crying and torn and broken because she is so defeated and she loves her child, but it doesn't matter because there's someone that wants to adopt them, that has a bigger house and makes more money. We're not doing our jobs. We're not doing our jobs. And so I really want through this book for everyone to not only question if they're truly an advocate, but to be a real advocate and prevent the things that happened to me from happening to the next young person. Because it's too late for me, which is why I said I don't even care to meet any of these people or show them who I am. I'm worried about the generation we're leaving behind. And then the generation that they're going to leave behind. Are we still doing the same things over and over again? Or are we just strangers walking around with these fancy little titles and creating these policies that are benevolently disguised as protection? Or are we actually doing something to change our world, change our communities, change how we see and love and embrace each other? Are we just existing and doing what we're told?
This is really good for me to hear right now, because I just got assigned my second case, and I've taken the opportunity to review the volunteer handbook really carefully, and to also to pay attention to the changes that are being made in the dependency system. And everything you're saying right now is exactly what I happen to need to hear right now to really take my role seriously, to question everything and to keep my eyes open. Is this really what's right? And if it's not, what can I do to change it?
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's
Absolutely.
great to hear. So let me ask you, for the writing of the book, did it help you to process what's happened to you?
Oh my gosh. It was, if nothing else, if the book was never released and I didn't sell one copy, I healed through this process. I had so much closure. My husband would tell you there were days, because my writing hours were from 4 a.m. to 6 a.m.
Oh my gosh.
That's when I wrote.
Gosh.
And sometimes in the middle of the night, if I had to meet a deadline, but I cried so much and I finally allowed myself to grieve all of the things that happened to me. I suppressed so much of my experiences because I needed to. I needed to act like none of that happened, or only remember the little bitty parts that I could stomach talking about and, being vulnerable about. And I almost went to the point of getting a hypnosis because there's a lot I still didn't remember. And so this is really me recounting the parts that I did and having to do research to say, wait, where was I living, or who was this person? But it was therapeutic for me to write this and to relive it and to heal from it and to see my mom. I blamed her so much for her experience, for how I experienced the system. And, I hated her for, allowing me and my siblings to kind of go into the system. But then when writing it as an adult, as a mom now, and understanding how poverty and oppression and even racism works, I was so sad. I was so sad for my mom, like for what she didn't have, for what she could have had, for what she could have been, and how defeated she must have felt to have all these children and be poor and not have the stability and home she needed. I I grieved what was for her, because she left Baltimore and came to LA to be somebody. She wanted to be a model and actress, and she had this dream, and it was thwarted, completely thwarted. And so I was able to really see my mom and just understand and forgive her even more throughout this process. And she passed 5 years ago, and the year before she passed, she finally told me sorry, and I got the closure I needed, and I was able to spend that last year with her, loving her and helping take care of her, and having no regrets, thank God. But writing this, I just cried so much, but was so healed. And the first version of this book was much more detailed. I actually had to go back and clean it up a bit because I didn't want anyone throwing the book because of how graphic it was. It was so
Mhm.
graphic, but I needed to be raw and get it out in that way, and to come face to face with what I experienced, because I would always sugarcoat it. Even now we always say child sexual exploitation. Like I was a victim of child pornography.
That's right.
And
That's right.
it was hard for me to say that out loud. I would
Yeah.
never say that because it's just easier to say we've accepted, we could stomach child sexual exploitation because we hear it so much. When you talk about child pornography, I was like, that's the scary word I do not want to say, but I said it.
Right, but there's also a lot of debate about that, because that implies if it's child pornography that somehow the child has agreed. There's some people that think that's
Exactly.
even like a really reprehensible term.
Exactly. And I go into that in my book where they made fake IDs for us, had us sign contracts. They made it was a mess. And that's how they trap you, because they feel like they make it seem like you're beheld to this role, to this job. You have to do it. They teach you how to act, and even it's you'll read about it, but I go
Yeah,
into a
I
lot of
will.
detail about that experience. But also it's something that still affects me to this day. To this day, I'm bothered by it. I turned 18 during that time. And so there's videos, and there's things out there still that haunt me to this day. And the biggest thing is there's millions of girls who have been trapped into child pornography, even at 18 years old, into pornography. And I remember being in my group home, and we would drive out with the group home staff. And, back then, and even now, the girls could leave, they can't touch you. And if you were just to drive around some of these group homes, there are people waiting, circling like vultures,
Right, to scoop
waiting,
you, right?
waiting to scoop you up, and then scoop you up and then train you to go inside and recruit the other girls. And we know this to be true. And so when you think of these young girls who are on these pornography sites, who are like, even if they're 18 years old, no one wakes up and say, oh, this is what I want to do with my life. We have to question that. And I would love to see someone boldly pass a law where you can't even do pornography under the age of 25 or 21 years old because of how prevalent the entrapment is. And also, we have brain science that shows that we don't even understand the full consequence of our actions until we're 25. So, what we
Right.
may be doing now as a 17, 16, 18-year-old, even 19-year-old, we're not thinking down the line that I'm going to have children, I'm going to have this life and this family and this career, or not because I'm afraid to, because of what's out there. These are the things we don't talk about. And I want to humanize and talk about more. I feel that there will be so many girls that are seen finally by my story because no one wants to talk about this, especially no one with my role. We want to, and it's so easy to act like it didn't happen. It's so
Yep.
easy to just exist and do what you have to do. And it takes a lot of courage to tell this story,
It
especially when
certainly
you're a
does.
mother and when
Yeah.
you have a husband. But I'm so fortunate that I have so much support, and I'm just going to tell this story, and we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, let's do it.
I'm terrified though. I will
Yeah, I
admit.
don't blame you, but I think it's probably gonna be super freeing too, right? It's gonna be like, "Okay, this is it. This is it.
Yeah.
No sugarcoat. This is it."
Yeah. And no one can hold it against you. That's the biggest thing. When we tell our own stories, when we take the power and tell our stories and use our stories to help other people heal and to change systems and to change laws and policies, that's where the real power is.
Yeah,
That's where
that's
the
your part.
real healing comes from. So for me, if I have to be the person that says, I'm going to tell this story and not give a damn about my cute little titles and what people think about me, then I'll be that person because I have a husband that loves me. I have a family that loves me. I'm so happy and content that nothing else matters. And I want people to heal from this. I want young women and boys to be seen. I see you. You're out there, and we're going to advocate for you. We're going to show up and advocate for you because this has to stop.
Alright, so tell me what's next for you, like, in your dream of dreams. You're now the CEO of CASA LA. You're getting your doctoral
Hmm.
degree. You've written a book that will be a bestseller, maybe made into a movie.
Fingers crossed.
Uh, what else could you have?
Policies. I want to go policy by policy and use the platform we have at CASA, the books I'm writing, some of the lectures I'll be giving. I want to change policy. We need people, boots on the ground in the trenches doing the work, but the real change comes with policies. No, I will never run for office, but I want to use our platform to help change policies, inspire new policies, question things right now. And I'm also a commissioner with LA County Children and Families, and we're leading the work in LA County around mandated reporting. My dissertation is on mandated reporting, from mandated reporter to community supporter, reimagining schools as the nexus to address intersectional social justice. So a lot of the work I'll be doing in the
Nice.
next 2 years, and with CASA, because we're creating a mandated reporting training here at CASA, is around mandated reporting. And figuring out how do we show up in a more community supportive role. So when charities come your way who are stealing clothes and underwear, we're not criminalizing and punishing them. We're asking, how can we support you? How can we help you? What's the problem? What do you need? And humanizing that experience.
Wow, I just love that. I
Yeah.
just love it. Okay, I'm going to ask you one last question that I ask all my guests. And if you can dig deep for this, I'm sure you can. What is the one thing that no one would ever know about you unless you told them?
I think that I'm an introvert. People think I'm an extrovert because I do public speaking, because I'm very vocal. I'm an activist, an advocate. I actually would prefer not to talk to anyone ever and just be in my house. I'm not a social butterfly. I love being in my house doing nothing with my kids, with my family. I can watch ratchet reality TV all day if you let me. I am a homebody, but people do not think that about me when they see me. They think I'm just this outgoing person, and I'm really terrified and afraid every time I have to be around people. But it's necessary.
Right. So are you forcing yourself to do that in order to?
I'm not forcing it. It's just necessary. Like if I'm going to advocate and do this work, I have to talk to people. I have to be out there. If I see something wrong, I have to say something. But when I'm put in like social environments where I'm around, like say if I go to a party, it's so awkward. It's so weird and awkward and like small talk. I hate like this. I can do all day having meaningful conversations about something. But if we're just to have a conversation about what are you wearing or clothes or boys or anything. I cannot do it.
Yeah, I hate that. I hate
I
that stuff.
cringe. I
Yeah,
cringe.
makes me feel really awkward too. And my boyfriend's the opposite. He can work a room like crazy, and I'll just
My
be in the
husband too.
corner. Yeah.
My husband too. I'm the corner girl. I'm like, please don't talk to me if we don't have if it's not of substance.
So maybe we're just snobs. Maybe we're just conversation
But
snobs.
I'm not a snob. I'm super nice and super sweet. And if you have a conversation with me, you would never know because I want you to also feel comfortable. But it just has to be a conversation of substance. Otherwise, I'm like, and deep down inside, it feels so uncomfortable and awkward. I'm like forcing to find an answer.
Yeah,
So
well, that's pretty amazing because especially those fireside chats, they're like super fun, entertaining, and
yeah,
informative all at once. And that's because
because
you're
it's
leading
something
it.
of substance. Yeah, it's of substance.
Yeah.
I can do those all day.
Listen, thank you so much for what you're doing, for your leadership. It's just awesome. And I hope under your helm there will be more and more and more CASAs, more changes, more social action change, and all the good stuff for so many kids, not only in Los Angeles, but all over the world, really, right?
Absolutely. And thank you so much for your leadership. What you're doing is so important. And I just value you as a CASA. And I'm so glad to be in this circle and family together. So keep doing what you're doing.
Okay, yay on us. Okay.
Air
Little
hug.
like little small steps. All right. You have a good evening, okay?
You as
Charity, thank
well.
you so much.
Bye bye.
Bye.
Thank you, Charity, for taking all of your experience and putting it into something that can help change the future of others. It really makes a huge difference. So thank you very much. And for those of you out there who'd like to read her book, it's called Stranger Danger, and you can buy it at our website at charitychandlercole.com. Our next guest is Reverend Barbara Lane, the author of Broken Water, an extraordinary true story. Barbara is the 9th of 11 sisters, abandoned by their birth parents, and they were all placed at St. Dominic's Orphanage in St. Louis. Eventually, they were all separated and placed into different homes, but finally reunited 43 years later. Her book tells the powerful true story of her journey through the many years she spent trying to reconnect with her long-lost sisters and solve the intriguing mystery of her family of origin, all while surviving and eventually healing from the life-threatening abuse she and one of her sisters endured in the home of their foster father, a mafia grunt. So join us next week for Reverend Barbara Lane. Thank you for listening, and be well. If you see something, say something. If you suspect a child's health or safety is jeopardized in any way by parents or anyone else, contact the Child Protective Services Agency in your county. 24-hour hotlines are staffed by trained social workers who will help you through the process, and you can do so anonymously. In California, you can call the Child Protection Hotline at 800-540-4000. So if you see something, say something. You might be saving a child's life. If you want to know more about becoming a CASA anywhere in the country, go to nationalcasagal.org, and in LA, casala.org. And if you want to know more about becoming a foster parent, check out the National Foster Parent Association at nfponline.org. There's also faithfosterfamilies.org and adoptuskids.org. There's tons of other information online as well, so you can just hunt around. We also want to thank the supremely talented Christina Apostolopoulos for her beautiful original music. You can find her music on Spotify or Instagram at Christina Aposta. And also thank you to Yukon Har for his engineering. Thanks for listening, and if you like what you hear and you find it as valuable as we do, please rate us and hit subscribe. You can also make a donation at bonusbabies.org. See you next time.